Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very exciting call that's exploring a new field that's emerging. It's actually an ancient field that's getting new modern sanction, and really it holds the opportunity to be so transformative for ourselves and our world. And that's really working as a psilocybin guide. So today we're going to have a deep dive into exploring a career as a psilocybin guide. This is both an introductory workshop about the career opportunity. You'll learn a lot about the latest science and legalities. You're also going to get a chance to learn about our brand new program that's done in partnership with the Bodhi Academy that is going to really pave a wholly new pathway for people who want to do the state-of-the-art training in this arena. So my name is Stephen Dinan. I'm the president of the Shift Network, and I have to say psychedelics have been a key part of my spiritual path ever since college, and have really helped propel the growth of the Shift Network in important ways. And we've really started making a commitment to bringing the best in this field forward in the last few years. So it's a very exciting moment for me to introduce you to Rose Moulin-Franco. She's a psychedelic enterprise executive. She's the founder of Bodhi Academy, and she's a true expert in this arena. So Rose, why don't you say hi?
Hi, Stephen. It's great to be with you today.
Great. And we have with her three of her eminent colleagues who work with her at the Bodhi Academy. We have Anthony Smith, who's a PhD. He's an instructor and the Chief Science Officer of Bodhi Academy. Anthony, welcome.
I'm glad to be here today.
Great to have you. And we also have Sienna Terranova. She's a lead instructor and practicum supervisor for Bodhi Academy. Sienna, welcome.
Thank you, Stephen. We're so excited to be here.
And Prema Sagara, who's also an instructor at Bodhi Academy. Prema, welcome.
Thank you, Stephen. Really excited to be here.
Great. Well, each of these teachers is really going to give us different dimensions of the overall puzzle of how we're creating this new ethical, safe, and transformational field, and how you can potentially be a part of that yourself. And it's great to be in a time when you can be fully out in the open and moving forward and making this your full-fledged career and serving the transformation of so many lives. If you can illuminate what's really brought us to this moment where decriminalization and legalization are now happening at scale.
Well, I'll just give you a sort of a timeline of these natural plant medicines that we're discussing that have now become so popular and having so much promise in the clinical traditions. You know, of course, these entheogens were used from ancient times all around the world in the Americas by indigenous people, African indigenous people, people in India in the yogic path, and also in the Middle East, in all across Asia, as well as in Europe and Egypt. And I took a deep dive into all of, not all of those, but some of those key ancient traditions. What happened with those ancient traditions in most places is that they sort of disappeared over time. And this was the beginning of the struggle of the indigenous people to maintain their plant medicine practices in the face of, colonization and essentially occupation by the Europeans who were moving out all over the world and had first really kind of suppressed their own practices and their own people who were exploring mysticism and spirituality and astrology and wellness and herbalism and all of these natural approaches, including entheogenic ceremony and entheogens for spiritual awakening. They used entheogens for healing, for the divine experience. It means the divine within, entheogen. Then, because they became restricted pretty much to the Americas, there was not much activity around Western involvement in psychedelic plant medicines until the 1950s and 1960s and all the way through the first psychedelic revolution in the 60s and 70s, when we had that big explosion of clinical studies. And now if you look back on some of those studies, you see the same thing we're seeing. Psychedelics were helpful in alleviating addiction disorders and alcohol disorders. They were massively effective in helping people with depression, anxiety. You know, when therapeutic purposes were then reintroduced through research that started accelerating in 2010, this led to different regions wanting to decriminalize and make these natural plant substances more easily available to people because we're in really a massive mental health crisis right now, with opioid addiction, mental health trauma, stress. We have a lot of veterans that have been exposed in numerous wars. The decriminalization movement began with Denver decriminalizing in 2019, and then in Oregon, voters passed the law to legalize psilocybin in 2020. So by 2021, and we were underway in creating the first ever state-approved psilocybin training programs, and the first ever psilocybin services started coming online in 2022 with licenses being issued in Oregon. Now, that same year is going to be very significant historically when people look back on this time, because that same year, Colorado legalized psilocybin also through a voter initiative. And they created, besides just a legal regulated system, they also created a decriminalized side, or a legal side, where communities could actually also share the plant medicines legally. Since that time, many municipalities have decriminalized. The studies we know, which we're going to hear more about in a few minutes, are just compelling in how psilocybin impacts depression, trauma, OCD, ADHD, addiction issues. And the states don't want to wait for the FDA to get finished with all their trials and then possibly only have pharmaceutical medicines available to people. They want to return to legalizing the natural plants and fungi that are psychoactive, that we have all traditionally, through our ancestors, turned to in times of need. And we are definitely in a time of need. And this is stimulating more areas, more places to decriminalize. And so here we are. We're training professional psychedelic guides who are trained in harm reduction methods that are really critical in delivering services to people. And we're at the beginning of the second psychedelic revolution.
Very exciting. And where do you think we go from here? I know there's a lot of speculation about how quickly legalization happens, but I know a lot of people watching today are probably living in states where it isn't legal yet. So just a little bit of what you've seen in terms of projections of the likely rate of legalization and standardization in the coming decade.
Yeah, the systems are quite different state to state. In Oregon, they have a closed licensing system where you must go to a psilocybin service center to request psilocybin services, and then you will get a psilocybin facilitator who's been through a state-approved training and passed a state exam and passed a background check and all these things, who has a license to be your psychedelic facilitator. Now, Colorado plans to replicate a similar system where they will have licensed healing centers, and they will also have licensed psilocybin facilitators. However, the interesting thing about Colorado is they legalized plant medicine across the board. So people can also offer harm reduction services without participating in the license system. And the personal use and community use side of the law in Colorado makes it legal for counselors, coaches, therapists, spiritual practitioners, traditional practitioners, and wellness professionals of all kinds, anyone in the healing arts, anyone offering harm reduction services, to offer those services legally for people who want to explore psychedelic plant medicine. So the Colorado model is really being picked up in other states, like Massachusetts and New Jersey are both considering legalizing plant medicines across the board and having people be allowed to provide harm reduction services and guide services for adults who have legal access and legal right to explore them. So there's some variations between the licensed closed license system and the more accessible community side, the most important one being around products. So you can buy products that are manufactured or cultivated and then provided to a healing center or a service center, and you can buy your products there. Or in Colorado, you can share the medicine. So what's really ideal about the Colorado law that I hope gets incorporated further is that anyone who holds a professional license, like a doctor, a nurse, a therapist, a counselor, who has a licensing board for that license, they prevented licensure boards by law from taking any disciplinary action against those practitioners for giving or sharing psilocybin with their clients and for providing psychedelic harm reduction services for their clients, which is the ideal model in my view. But the practical effect is it has opened up the potential for just about every healing professional to incorporate psychedelic services into the healing modalities that they're already offering. And that's a big part of our work, and how we approach the work is by having interdisciplinary practitioners also trained in psychedelic services. We can provide a much broader spectrum of helpful support and services for the modern person who's seeking these substances for some psychological healing or trauma recovery or addiction recovery. And I'm hoping that that model gets replicated in Massachusetts and New Jersey. And let's not forget all the municipalities. I think we're up to about 124 as of today that have decriminalized, meaning if you're using it in private and you're an adult, we're not bothering you. We're not interested in prosecuting you for psilocybin anymore. So this opens up a whole arena also for certified guides to provide actual harm reduction services for psychedelic clients. It's much a beginning of the movement. Yes, we have legal states and we have legal access. However, by 2037, it's predicted through studies that psilocybin and natural plant medicines will be legal in every state.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I mean, I know you sent me the JAMA Psychiatry article that was all about that analytic model that by 2037, the vast majority of the states are likely to have legalization or, decriminalization at the very least. And just interesting that there's a snowballing of legislation every year that's moving the needle further, and the successes of each state are going to get built upon. So I wonder if you can share a little bit. Psilocybin tends to be at the forefront. It tends to be most mentioned, legalized most quickly. Why do you think it really has the optimal therapeutic profile for the legalization phase that we're in?
There's certainly many things about psilocybin that lend it to easy legalization, easy decriminalization, and some really beneficial effects for people that are looking for healing or spiritual expansion. First of all, psilocybin is the most studied of all of the natural plant and fungi medicines. And it is the safest of all substances. When they rate various substances for harm to the person who takes it or harm that comes from a person using it, the most dangerous on that scale is alcohol, which is completely legal. And so now we're talking about the least harmful of all substances, and that is psilocybin mushroom. So we have the most clinical studies about its safety and also about the efficacy in providing relief from a variety of entrenched psychological, neurological, behavioral types of conditions that people are struggling with. It also provides a beautiful experience for spiritual awakening, consciousness expansion, really finding the transcendental self as the solution to the self that struggles with all of these things. And psilocybin is unique in its effects. It's similar somewhat to LSD, and at the same time, it's a natural medicine. So many people, prefer natural things over synthetics or pharmaceutical kinds of medications made in a lab. The psilocybin mushroom grows in the forest and grows on the earth, and the mycelium of the mushroom is underneath everything. It literally holds the forest together. And the mushrooms are traditionally said to be little beings of consciousness that are plant teachers who, when they are eaten by humans, become psychoactive and merge with us and show us things from a different point of view from what we could have without them. So the fact that the human body is the critical factor in converting psilocybin into psilocin, the actual psychoactive substance, it really indicates that they're meant for us. They're meant for us to eat, and they're meant for us to use to enhance our consciousness, heal ourselves, connect with others, and heal the collective consciousness too.
Beautiful. I want to ask a question about, what do you really see as the best backgrounds for those who are transitioning into becoming psilocybin guides? You've mentioned a lot of different arenas and professions that are going to be able to, depending on the state legalization, incorporate it, from coaches to therapists. What do you often see as the best backgrounds or training coming into then the preparation for being a psilocybin guide?
That's a great question, Stephen. It's so important that we have the right people to serve as psilocybin guides, because you're going to need to make a bond with the client. You're going to need to understand some hands-on harm reduction strategies, and you're going to need to understand ethics and confidentiality and how to work with a person who's wanting to come to the medicine for very serious psychological problems. So I really see counselors, therapists, doctors, nurses, coaches, people who've been underground guides, people who have some sort of existing healing practice as a healer in the healing arts, wellness professionals. They're best positioned because they understand how to work with people in a healing capacity. They understand how to support people who maybe have never had a psychedelic experience before. And they also need additional training to be able to understand the difference in the scope of practice for a psilocybin guide and a coach or a counselor or a nurse or a doctor or a wellness professional. They can be very complementary. And let's be realistic, a person who's going to engage the plant medicine in order to heal a trauma that they've had for 20 years, or symptoms they've been struggling with for decades, that they've tried many different methods to heal, those people are going to need a certain amount of psychedelic experience with appropriate preparation and appropriate integration, and then that's it. Now, they might need other things that the psilocybin can't give them. They might benefit from a coaching program. They might benefit from additional wellness support. They would certainly benefit from therapy in many cases. So if you already have an existing practice, you're ideally positioned to train as a certified psilocybin guide in order to bring the power of these psychedelic medicines into your healing practice, and also because you can already provide, and you are already providing, a lot of other supports that will help them have the best success.
That's great. Really great overview. And I'm wondering if you can share anything about the core of the protocol that you teach at Bodhi to really optimally work with psilocybin clients, given that, this is part of what you're going to be really going into a lot more in depth in the upcoming certification, but at least a little bit of an overview.
That's really important information, Stephen. The main scope of practice of a guide is harm reduction, and guides are masters of specific harm reduction protocols. And not only that, they are experts in psychedelic harm reduction, because they learn how psilocybin works in the body, how it influences the mind, what are the effects that it will have on a person at various dose ranges, what are different modalities that into which we can introduce psilocybin. If we use lower doses, we can make it a part of psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. If we put it in a microdosing dose, we can then have coaching programs that use microdosing to enhance motivation and increase results for clients. But to qualify somebody for psilocybin services, you really need to be well trained in all of the harm reduction tools and methods that we offer through this training program, including screening and intake, building the relationship, preparation planning, preparation education, how to really get to know your client and understand their intentions for why they want the psychedelic experience, being able to assess, will one psychedelic experience be enough? Will two be better? Would it be better if they followed up with a microdose protocol afterwards? Where is that client at? What does that client specifically need? We teach non-directive, client-centered methods, which are critical for ethical practice and critical for harm reduction. And then during the psychedelic experience, we train guides. What is your job? How to recognize adverse events, how to intervene in psychological distress, how to keep a safe container, how to make sure the setting is appropriate. There's so much clinical research on the impact of setting, on the impact of harm reduction methods and preparation and integration and all of the guide skills that we teach, proven through the research to actually reduce the likelihood of adverse events, reduce the likelihood of challenging or traumatic experiences, and reduce the likelihood of lasting psychological harm. This is the core. This is the field of practice for a certified psilocybin guide. You are a psychedelic harm reduction expert with a toolkit full of effective proven methods to reduce harm in psychedelics, prevent adverse events, and enhance the therapeutic benefits.
Really great overview. And the final question before we dive into some of the science is really just about this industry is exploding very quickly. I mean, venture capitalists are pouring billions of dollars. Everybody's anticipating it's going to be a multi-billion-dollar industry, which also has its pitfalls. It means a lot of people are coming in with without a lot of experience, sometimes without a lot of scruples either. So I'm just wondering if you just say a few words about how can we best prepare for really ethical, wise, and sacred and fulfilling careers in this field.
That's a critical issue that we're facing right now as this legal and decriminalized industry rapidly expands. Trained and certified guides definitely are going to play a crucial role in safe and effective psychedelic use for adults. There are people everywhere seeking psilocybin for every kind of reason, and they're, as we're going to hear pretty soon in the workshop, they're not the common psychonauts. So we need skilled trauma-informed guides to provide service in this high-demand arena of people seeking psychoactive medicines above ground for the first time. We want to be able to share the traditional knowledge of creating that sacred space, focusing on the ceremonial component and keeping that as a living tradition in harm reduction. We want people to bring the science and the knowledge and the hands-on skills to the work that they're doing. Just imagine all these people, as you said, Stephen, wanting to explore psilocybin, never having done it, not knowing anything about it. They deserve to have access to trained and skilled guides who can be with them and provide those critical harm reduction skills for them. It's a tremendous opportunity. We're talking about in 10 years or a bit more, it will be legal everywhere. We need people who feel the calling to reconnect with the earth, reconnect with the plant medicines, and to bring your healing practice to the next level, to get trained and get ready to be of service in this vast arena. You know, for the past 10 years, thousands of Americans have been traveling overseas to try to get the healing that they need. And it's been variable for them. Have you found someone who really knows how to help you? Did it actually help you with the reason that you had when you went to the medicine? Were you actually able to get that healing? Did you receive integration? The guide profession is just beginning. It's a whole new career field. And by getting your training now and getting the experience and joining the community of guides and practitioners, you will be one of the pioneers in this new explosive legal arena.
Great. Well, that was a wealth of information and so much wisdom, Rose.
Before we continue with the workshop, I want to transition to talking explicitly about the Psilocybin Guides program.
Such an exciting new possibility to really be trained in the state of the art and get like the best training out there for this work. I want to share a short video that really shares some of the experience of some of the students of Bodhi Academy. So let's pull up that video now and just get a little flavor for the actual transformation that happens in people's lives.
I am currently a psychotherapist and I have a private practice. It's such a highly nuanced training that I'm really experiencing a deepening of just my awareness of how to sit with people, how to attune to people, and also getting a deeper sense of how psychedelic assisted work can really facilitate vaster healing, deeper healing, and really progressive approaches to doing that. It's a pretty comprehensive, incredibly rich course that's worth the money, because if you're going to get trained to do this work, you want the best training possible. And without that best training, you don't have as much ability to do this work the best possible way. It's a step above other trainings. And, you know, the better the training, the better our ability to do this work is.
When people are empowered, you know, they start to get to know themselves better. When you're empowered and you're making decisions for yourself, and when you're reflecting on your environment and your surroundings, and you're able to, you know, put yourself into context, I think that there's an identity that you have with other people who have been through that. It creates a sense of community, you know, an authentic appreciation for life and struggle, and it builds a lot of camaraderie. A lot of people have come from more traditional backgrounds that are trying to tackle the same challenges and have become disenchanted with, you know, just the way that people are treated in those settings, and see that there's real power to this medication as far as it being used as a tool for liberation.
I actually had some time sober and was sort of kind of stagnating a little bit, I would say, on a lot of medication, a lot of antidepressants, and I wanted to move past that. That was really my intention coming to the medicine the first time, and it just really over-delivered. I was recommended to do this training. The most rewarding part of guiding people, I would have to say, is just being the witness. The training is so good about preparing you for every possible scenario. Being able to react to an unexpected situation is not the challenge. The challenge is keeping a constant check on my own physical and emotional state. That alone is rewarding, to realize that I am responsible for my own behavior and my own reactions. And if I can master that, then I don't need to be worried. I do think there is a certain emotional and psychological constitution to a guide. There's a certain calling that you get to do this work. There's something there, but as you move forward on this path, the flame gets fanned and it grows.
What a super compelling testimonial video that is, and so much great information and wisdom shared already today. So now is when I really want to give some time to talking through your opportunity to make psilocybin guiding a part of your future career path, the transformation for others and the transformation of your own healing work. Since I know people are drawn to the healing arts because they want to liberate people from suffering. And psilocybin is proving to be one of the most powerful ways to do that, especially when done in a very wise, safe, and therapeutic way. So the Psilocybin Guide Certification Program is, we believe, really the state of the art around the world. It's the best training out there. It's going to give you the deep training on all levels that allows you to transform and really grow in your capacity to hold this kind of space for others. So you can find the training laid out in detail at mushroomguidestraining.com, mushroomguidestraining.com. It's a 6-month training and it's pretty intensive. So what we wanted to do is not stretch it out over a full year. We want to get you into the position where you can start to do work with other people, but do it in a very condensed way, which is going to include a lot of hours of training in the best of every dimension of this path. It's going to give you deep insight into effective dose ranges, neuroscience of psilocybin, in-depth coaching work, effective client communication, cultural and historical context, practical facilitation skills, integration techniques and practices, ethical and legal considerations, and as Rose has talked about, personal development and self-care, because that's really not separable from the other dimensions of your practice. So this is a program that is going to include an honoring of traditional roots and modern innovation. So respecting the ancestral and traditional indigenous roots of many practices with the modern and the clinical. It's going to include direct care skills. It's going to have a diverse and inclusive learning environment. And I think one of the most exciting things is a really in-depth 100-hour state-of-the-art practicum experience that we'll share more about. And it's going to be a future-ready certification that ensures you're at the forefront of the emerging field and that you have the skill to work with and integrate psilocybin healing through an interdisciplinary approach. You've got expertise in client preparation, intake procedures, proficient in individual and group work with psilocybin sessions, that there's a critical role of integration. It's very comprehensive, and you'll have the legalities and ethical considerations. So in a moment, we'll have them talk more in depth. I'm just giving a little bit of a broad overview. And this program is really for mental health professionals, medical practitioners, wellness coaches, holistic healers, and people who work as spiritual guides and leaders as well, since it's going to be applicable in a wide variety of areas. So Rose, I'd love for you to come on and maybe give a little bit of your high level of the program and what you're so enthusiastic to bring forward. Then you can read out some of the units and give us a little bit of preview of what's coming in some of those units.
Great. Yeah, well, as you said, the training is very comprehensive. We have 150 hours of recorded video content that you can watch as you go through the various components of the training. We're going to focus on the science, the knowledge, and the hands-on skills that are needed by guides. We share a lot of stories from our lived experience facilitating for others. And we also shared a huge amount of content on the actual harm reduction methods that guides use. We have a variety of guest speakers who will address important topics like the legal landscape, death and dying, and the use of psychedelics, psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. So we want to make it, get a variety of lenses that we can look at this work through. We will have a weekly integration session to meet with all the students. You'll get to meet the faculty, ask questions, follow up on what you learned. We'll be providing synchronous training throughout the program so that when you complete the preparations section of the training, you will come together with the students in your cohort and you will do role plays and demonstrations and actively engage the content you've learned and learn to master it with coaching from the faculty on how to improve your skills in preparation and integration. We also have a 100-hour supervised practicum, which is a very extensive practicum, includes hours where you observe the supervisor conducting intake, preparation, education, administration, and integration sessions, and includes hours where you directly provide those critical services under the watchful eye of a supervisor. The most exciting thing about that practicum is, besides mastering those skills, is that you will be preparing each other and helping each other integrate the administration portion of the practicum, which takes place in a 10-day retreat in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, where the whole cohort will come together. And if the students choose, they can have a psilocybin experience in order to allow the cohort to facilitate for each other and really have direct experience with psilocybin with supervisors and experienced guides present. They will also be practicing group administration sessions while they're at the 10-day retreat. And we also offer non-psilocybin, non-ordinary states induced by breath work and sound therapy for people who don't wish to take it. But everyone will learn how to facilitate live at the practicum, and we'll follow that up with additional integration Zoom sessions, also under the supervision of the supervisors, and then people will be ready to receive their certification. We also are including a suite of tools and forms that will help you launch your practice, and a first-year membership in our mentoring network for guides.
Well, it's so exciting. And I want to just put a few little dots on things there. Like the practicum is going to be at a beautiful retreat center nestled in the mountains of the Rocky Mountains. Because of the rigor of this program and the intimacy, we are limiting the number of students to ensure personal attention and maximum impact. And so if you are drawn to the opportunity, you're really going to want to get your application in right away. We anticipate it will sell out and that there will have to be limited in how many people we can accept. And so it's going to be to your advantage to go ahead and get an application right away, and we can start doing rolling admissions with the people who are really qualified. So again, you can find all the details at mushroomguidestraining.com. And I should mention that the online portion of the training is going to be the first 5 months of the training. And so a lot of materials have been meticulously and very professionally recorded in advance, originally to train, some of it was to train their own guides and some new for this program. And so this is some of the state-of-the-art information, all recorded recently, and it's going to be available every week. You can dive into sometimes 2 hours, sometimes 4 hours of content, and then coming together live to do the integration work. So it provides some of that live interactive cohort-based learning, ability to ask your questions live of Rose and the other experts, and have the other content that's really important and valuable for you to be able to do that on your own time, whether you're fitting in at night or on the weekend or as part of your workday. So it really allows you to kind of have some of the flexibility of online learning and the live components that allow you to sort of maximize the value of your experience, plus the deep experiential work that you're going to be able to do in the mountains of Colorado. So it's going to be really extraordinary. It's a more in-depth training than anything else that's out there. There's more online learning. There's more in-depth science and therapeutic practice, as well as the practicum is more extended than what's available from other programs. And so then you also bring in a lot of guest faculty as well. And Rose, I don't know if you want to highlight any of the particular guest faculty and some of the other folks who we weren't introduced to today, who are going to be part of the program as well.
We have from Colorado, Sean McAllister, who was the lawyer who was the primary author of the community use side of Prop 122 in Colorado that made personal use and therapeutic harm reduction services legal in Colorado. And he's going to cover a wide variety of legal terrains in his presentation and many different ways that guides can practice with their harm reduction services. And then we're going to have some special content for the therapists in our program and psychologists and people that are interested in the psychedelic assisted psychotherapy side. And we're having a guest speaker there, Drew Snyder from the Integrative Psychiatric Institute. He is the head of psilocybin practicums for IPI, and he'll be talking about how to actually do psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, what are the different dose ranges and how the therapy is done, and what are the most important goals in that kind of a setting. And then we also have, I'll just highlight one more guest speaker because we have some others lining up right now, but I'm also having an expert in the use of psychedelics for death and dying, or in the whole process of end of life and how psychedelics can support that transition. And our guest speaker there is Abby Lutz, and she is a professional death doula, and she's an expert in the arena of end of life and death and dying and psychedelics. And she has written articles for a wide variety of psychedelic media outlets, including Double Blind and Psychedelic Spotlight. And she has an ongoing blog where she addresses topics related to conscious transition from life into afterlife. So pretty exciting content from our guest speakers.
Quite, it's just an extraordinary faculty for this program. And so there's 150 hours of online teaching and content you're going to get. You're going to get recordings for every single one of those, which is really helpful. So you have access to those pre-recorded teachings for indefinitely, and that's going to give you a library that you can access on demand when you need it. If you need to refer back later, it's hard to absorb all in the moment and apply. So it's really good to be able to go back and refer to some of the lessons and learning and key insights as you begin to work with clients. As we said, you have not only those hours of pre-recorded content with Rose and many other faculty, you have the live weekly integration sessions. There's recordings of those integration sessions, both video and audio. There's also word-for-word transcripts of integration sessions in addition to all the pre-recorded teachings as well. That's really helpful for those who learn better by reading. We have the elective teachings with guest faculty. There's interactive exercises and questions for each lesson. So there's a real journey of your own personal transformation. And you'll have an online community group to support you and deepen your experience in the cohort that you're in. So this is really going to give you the most optimized learning environment. And I'm wondering, since we still have some of our faculty here, if you'd share a few things that you're excited about to bring forward that are included in your teaching segments. Anthony, you want to share anything?
Yes, so I go extensively into a number of different sections about the chemistry of psilocybin and the neurobiology of psilocybin. I make a really strong effort to make that contexted for people who aren't necessarily chemistry graduates. So I do my very best to explain it in a way that the layman or the non-chemist can understand. But I think it's important to have some idea and grasp on what is actually happening to the molecule in the body over the time course of the journey, as well as have a grasp specifically of clinical trial outcomes, and so what scientific research actually says to support the exact kind of work that we're doing. I also do a bunch of pharmacognizance, so trying to teach people to understand how to interview and pay attention to drugs and dietary supplements and lifestyle elements that could affect positively or negatively their psilocybin experience.
Great. Well, sounds super exciting. And Sienna, how about we bring you on, and what are some of the things that you are teaching in this program that you're excited to bring forward?
There are so many aspects of the program that I'm really, really excited to bring forward. But I think the most exciting and the most important piece for me is not only bringing forth a really comprehensive, really expansive curriculum that is full of all different kinds of tools that are going to really be able to serve the guide and really be able to serve the client. The really exciting piece for me is when we're meeting together for study groups, when we're coming together for the hands-on practicum, to really give guides an opportunity to apply all of the tools that they're learning, to be able to apply that wisdom and to be able to show up confidently as guides in your work. It can be very intimidating in the beginning. It can feel very daunting, but with a robust training program like this, and moreover, an opportunity to come together and get that hands-on training, I mean, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, really. And I'm really excited to be able to bring that forward, to be able to best support people in avoiding pitfalls and all kinds of stumbling blocks and obstacles that we had to overcome in the good old days.
Great. And let's bring Prema back on. And I would love for you to also hear from you, Prema, what you're excited to be teaching in this program as well.
I'm going to start off my coursework with indigenous uses, which is particularly exciting for me because I'm going to talk about some information regarding the identity of the Vedic Soma and what it really is that has never been discussed in the public domain, or at least that most people have never heard about. And so that topic is very compelling to me because many scholars have written about this, written entire books about it. There are many papers out there regarding the question of what is Soma. So we're going to talk about that, and I think it will really open your consciousness to some new possibilities regarding traditional and indigenous uses. We're going to cover some traditional indigenous uses from various global cultures, and my hope is that you're going to see the level of information that makes me so on fire for passionately pursuing and understanding what are the key elements of indigenous uses and the ceremonial components, and why they're so beneficial and healing for many people. In addition to that, we're going to talk about neuro wellness. And not only am I going to tell you what I do from neuro wellness protocols, but I'm going to give you information that you can use, neuro wellness methods that you can practice that are safe and that I will make available to everyone. I'm actually going to teach things that I've been using that I've never taught before. So you're going to get some exclusive information that is going to be highly useful in practice, and I think you'll find it to be extremely valuable. In addition to that, I'm also going to discuss different types of dosing strategies for unique scenarios. You know, I, as a clinical nutritionist and clinical herbalist, deal with doses of natural substances on a daily basis. And I've been doing that for so long. So I'm going to give you some insights on how to use specific dosing techniques for specific individuals who need tailored care. And so I'm going to leave that information for the course, but I can tell you that it's very important to understand how much to give someone and when they might need a booster dose. What is a booster dose, and how do you try to quantify and understand what is the proper amount to give them if they're going to need an additional dose? And so the combination of neural wellness along with these clinical tools that you can implement is going to be extremely helpful tools for you to have in your quiver.
Your enthusiasm is really contagious and just so wonderful to hear. So truly, this is going to be a state-of-the-art, one of a kind program, and we're so excited to bring it forward to all of you who are considering this career in this area, or in addition to your healing practice. We have 250 hours of content and teaching. There's bonuses that we've heard about. There's incredible value in this program, and the price is $15,997. And you can save about $1,000 off that if you register before February 29th, 2024. So I encourage you to apply right away, because if you're clear that you want to go forward with this, it's great to go ahead and get applied. We'll start greenlighting people as soon as we see that they're qualified. So you really ensure your position, and you'll also get that $1,000 discount. So the price will be $14,997. So given that this is really preparing you for a lifetime of valuable service and a career, it's a great investment in yourself and your future. Primary class sessions are going to be available on select Thursdays and primarily Wednesday for the live integration sessions. And then the recordings you're going to get that complement the weekly teaching, integration sessions, and elective sessions are going to be available released on a weekly basis. So, and you'll have access to those indefinitely. So if you go to the sales page at mushroomguidestraining.com, you're going to see quite a number of beautiful testimonials in addition to the ones that we saw earlier of people who have worked directly with this really stellar team and the kind of impact in their lives. And so you'll get a sense for some of the people that you'll be playing with, sort of learning from the different faculty. There's a lot more detail than we can cover on this call on that information page. So I encourage you to go there and take the time to read it through and tune in with yourself. Maybe ask for guidance or a dream or just a sense in meditation. So this is a big commitment of time and energy and focus. We want people to be clear that this is the right next step for you. And if you do get that yes, we are welcoming you with open arms. After the application, we want to make sure that there's a match and you're pre-qualified for this, but we know that the guides who come through this program are really going to be at the forefront of this important field for the future of the planet. I really have felt like psychedelics coming online is part of how a larger shift on our planet happens. It's part of how we heal the massive amount of trauma and psychological issues that are really weighing humanity down. It's really part of us birthing a more beautiful future. So if you choose to move forward, you're going to be part of that and really part of a new vanguard of healing and hope for the planet. So let's turn our focus to the science now. And Anthony, I want to bring you forward and kind of just give you the microphone to let you share some about what are some of the most exciting and promising pieces of scientific research that are part of what's fueling the legalization movement and getting psychiatrists and venture capitalists and therapists getting so excited about the future of the field.
I wouldn't point out a specific individual paper, but there's a whole body of mechanistic work that's super exciting. A lot of this is coming out of Johns Hopkins University. There's a really great researcher there named Manoj Das. And what he and his group are working on are, well, we understand from interviews, from a lot of clinical work with psilocybin, that the perception of the depth of the experience or the intensity of the experience, this so-called oceanic boundlessness and loss of ego. So the intensity of that experience is always highly correlated with the efficacy of the intention, right? That the person takes into the journey. So we know that it works, but Manoj Das's group has worked extensively with functional magnetic resonance imaging work. So they're looking at real-time scans of the brains and mapping the oscillations of actual synaptic waves throughout the brain. And so they're starting to understand specifically why this is working, why if you feel clinically depressed and resistant to drugs and counseling for many years with a single experience that's intentional and guided, you can have almost complete reduction or loss of depression symptoms for months or even forever. And so these guys are really working out the specifics in the brain of where these movements are happening and what is actually happening. It's pretty exciting.
So yeah, Anthony, I'd love for you to share for us a little bit more about how psilocybin works in the brain and how it can really be catalyst for rewiring neuronal pathways, healing trauma, and just the overall way it works.
Trauma and addiction patterns, in some way, to say it simply, become hardwired, if you will. And those hardwired sort of cognitive circuits are linking our fear and pain avoidance circuits neurologically, and they're connecting them directly to the part of the forebrain or the midbrain, which is our limbic and emotional centers, right? Which drives feeling and emotion directly into drive and avoidance of pain or suffering, right? Psilocin seems to radically alter this so-called hardwired pattern between your limbic system and your drive system. And as I was talking about in the previous question, actually reroutes or cyclically pulses some of these cognitions out to different parts of the brain cortex. In particular, we're talking about the anterior anterior cingulate caudate, right? This is a part of the brain that's much more analytical and perceptive, right? So this is the theory going today in the context of psilocybin for trauma and addiction, is that it's actually moving some of these cognitive neural pathways between emotion and pain avoidance out to the part of your brain that can actually analyze the situation and apply cognitive perception to it, as opposed to like a deep feeling of need to soothe with drug. And we see this again with interviews, exit interviews with people who do intentional psilocybin journeys for addiction, is that they report not that their drive for the drug or the addiction is gone, or that they can fight it. They report that it feels like it's in a different place where they can see it like from a different perspective, and they can see that drive and need and make an analytical and cognitive choice to change their behavior, right? So it feels less like a drive and something like an observation that they're able to actually change their behavior about.
That's truly fascinating. I wasn't aware of that. There's another area I'd love for you to share a little bit about, which is new areas of benefit that are being researched. I know there's a lot of kind of core things that, from facing death to trauma to addiction, that have quite a body of work around it, but there's a lot of new areas of application that are coming online, and just maybe share about a few of those.
Yeah, there is rich work in psychology, depression, anxiety. One of the most interesting ones for me, there's a company called Nova Mentis out of Canada, and they have an experimental psilocybin drug named NM1001. And these guys are working on preclinical and clinical trials for Fragile X syndrome. Fragile X syndrome is, I believe, the leading inherited form of a cognitive and intellectual disability. It's also the prime driver between at least genetic forms of autism. And these guys are trying to leverage what amounts, in our context, to microdoses of psilocybin, to leverage not so much the psychedelic activity, but the neuroplasticity activity to drive dendrite branching and improve synapses. I think that's probably the newest and most unique area of psilocybin outside of the context of, guided journeys for adults.
It's really exciting. And just one other area that I thought it's worth covering today, sort of for people to have a sense, is what are some of the contraindications or the things that you don't want to sort of treat with psilocybin that are increasingly becoming visible?
Sure. And I've taken a pretty deep dive into this subject, as the staff scientist, because it's important as we move forward in commercializing some aspects of this. From what I know, the contraindications haven't changed a whole lot in the last few years from what we've known before. I mean, mushrooms and psilocybin itself are essentially non-toxic as far as the physiological. So the only real contraindications, one is a bit theoretical, but you do see a lot of it in the research, and this is long-term use of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs. There is at least a theoretical potential for long-term users of those to have an acute syndrome called serotonin syndrome. Potentially, in clinical research recently, there hasn't really been any significant cases of that, so that's a theoretical concept. There's actually a few groups who are co-administering SSRIs. So that's one, I would say, mild but interesting contraindication. The main one would be schizophrenia in the patient or anywhere within like the direct family of the patient. And that would probably expand also to what we call schizotype spectra. So whether that's the self or familial schizotype spectra, those folks are not, it's not a good idea to think about experimenting with psychedelics in general. And then lastly, I would say those who are prone to or have actually experienced true psychotic episodes, dangerous manias that would maybe include self-harm or persistent suicidal ideation. Those are the main contraindications outside of we won't administer to young people or pregnant or nursing women. Those are just generalized and to, I think, therapeutic drug use, not really psilocybin specific.
Super helpful and really illuminating, Anthony. Really great scientific overview. Sienna, let's bring you on, and I want to invite you to share a little bit about how the overall client base is shifting as we move from this kind of underground, more experimental time into more mainstream applications, and how is that shifting really the preparation that's required for guides?
Well, that's a really important point of consideration, and we've seen a lot of shifts and a lot of changes in the demographic of individuals coming forward for service, the intention behind their desire to come forward. As the industry has grown and mainstream media attention has gotten so loud and public interest has reached kind of a fervor, we see this big flood of people coming forward. And we also see a really dynamic change in the guides and facilitators that are coming forward to kind of meet that market. So there's kind of both sides of that equation of the guide client equation. We're seeing a lot of changes. So specific to the clientele changes, we're seeing a lot of people who have more intricate presentations. They're coming with greater challenges, psychological challenges, behavioral challenges, mental health challenges. Some of these people have long-term trauma and PTSD that they've been navigating for 10 years, 20 years, their entire life as they know it. So that is a really significant change from kind of the more typical model of client that we used to see 15 years ago, 10 years ago, where those people maybe had a generally kind of more adventurous spirit, more psychedelic experience. What we're seeing now is that the people coming forward often have no psychedelic experience. So that is presenting kind of an additional challenge that needs to be met by guides and guide training programs. And that's really what we're after with this program, is really setting a standard for harm reduction practices that are going to be able to support those clients who don't have an experiential understanding and maybe don't even really have much of an understanding at all of what psilocybin is, aside from, I heard this can make me better, I want to get better, let's get down to getting better. And that's what we're here to do, to be able to do that and serve that need to a super high degree.
I'm wondering, can you share a little bit more about some of the ethical considerations that go in, since you lead the practicum portions for Bodhi Academy, just the ethical considerations for guiding psychedelic therapy?
Yeah, of course. The ethical considerations are really, really significant, and for us, the primary ethical consideration is the safety, the harm reduction piece, and the personal empowerment of our clients. We have a client-centered approach to all of our work. So from start to finish, we're really keeping that harm reduction goal in mind. That's the foundation for all of the training and all of the work. Along with that, we're empowering individuals to be able to lean into their own recovery, to lean into their own healing, to lean into coming back into right relation with themselves and their own personal power. So beginning with integration process, an intake process that really deep dives into the individual's personal history, medical history, medication history, psychological history, so that we get a really comprehensive picture of what each individual person is coming with, how we can best serve them. Sometimes that means making referrals to kind of other specialists, ensuring that they are set up for success with their treatment. So from there, we move into preparation and education and really giving clients strong foundations so that when they go forward throughout their experience, when they go into their journey, they're well prepared. They have strategies, they have tools and techniques that they're going to be able to use along the way. Following that, we have extensive integration practices to really be able to meet the needs of all of the clients who come seeking service, including those with more complicated integration needs, needing to integrate shifts in their lives in multiple different areas of their life. So, all around, we have a very high standard for ethical considerations, and it's reflected throughout the entire training program and throughout our work. But the primary ethical consideration that I hope that all guides, not just guides who take this training program, but anyone who's on this call who is considering serving in any way for the medicine, and any and all legal guides, are keeping safety standards at the forefront of their mind, harm reduction protocols and practices at the forefront of their mind, and remembering that this medicine is here to empower individuals to take back their sovereignty, to take back their ability to heal themselves. Those are my top ethical considerations.
That's so important, and it connects in some ways with the next question, since you have a background in ministry as well. And I'm particularly interested in how, as different plant medicines and psilocybin come online, how that's going to inform and transform religious and spiritual practice as well. And so, in getting at, like, what are some of the opportunities for people who are drawn to ministry or healing arts to sort of integrate this primarily as a spiritual tool rather than just a psychotherapeutic tool? I'd love for you to address the combination of psychedelics with other healing modalities. I know a lot of the research studies want to isolate the effects, but in practice, it's really great to combine psychedelics with weekly therapy or with group work or different kinds of meditation practice. And I'm just wondering if you're starting to see some patterns emerging about what some of those optimal combinations and are from what you've seen, and both in the underground and now in the legal world.
Yes, it's so exciting to have an opportunity to start playing with those combinations more and more. In the underground, you kind of had to search around to find practitioners who were open to working with the medicine in, areas of decriminalization or areas where the medicine was illegal. You had to find those people who were willing to show up, and then who also were kind of in alignment, right? Spiritually in alignment, or in alignment of their practices with yourself and with the medicine. Now, in the new legal landscape, it really opens up just a huge array of opportunities with different practitioners, different facilitators, different therapists, feeling really, really excited to want to work with the psilocybin, which is really, really exciting for the people who work with the psilocybin and also want to work with other professionals like sound healers, therapists, breathwork practitioners, addiction specialists. It's really, there's a limitless list really of healing professions who can come together and become really dynamic pillars of support for individuals to grow, communities to grow. And that is extremely exciting. Even healing professions that you might not think about, like clinical nutritionists and personal trainers, bringing together the healing opportunity that exists within those modalities with the healing potential of plant medicine really creates an opportunity, a catalyst for exponential growth, transformational healing, unlike really anything you've ever seen before. And the opportunities are really limitless for different healing modalities and different healing professionals to be able to come together and create really incredible offerings.
So exciting, Sienna, and really your passion for this work is so palpable and really inspiring, I think, for myself and so many others. Let's bring Prema on, and I want to ask Prema a question first about, there's been a lot of focus in the Western medical model on isolating compounds and sort of, in a way, you strip out the nature and ceremony and ritual community elements of this work. But I wonder if you want to share a little, are there drawbacks to that? And is it important to include some of those sort of time-tested shamanic, indigenous, traditional elements as well?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because it's clearly one of my deep passions. There's emerging evidence being published right now supporting the entourage effect theory in psilocybin. And so we're going to look at all of that information in depth during the course. But I'll tell you that it's compelling for me because I've had this conviction for years that natural psychedelics are perhaps superior in some way. And maybe that reveals my bias, but there's some papers being published now this past year that show that natural psilocybin is more therapeutically effective in some regards. And so I'm excited to put a spotlight on that. And, you know, in addition to that, there's a spiritual component to the mushroom, which affects its biochemistry. And that's part of where the tradition intersects with science. And so the intersection of science, in my opinion, is what generally produces the best clinical outcomes, or, you know, the best effects, whether we're talking therapeutic effects or clinical effects.
I know one of the things that we really are so excited to work with Bodhi Academy on is this very holistic approach. And I know you've done work with cleansing and nutritional protocols, other things that really can complement the healing from working with psilocybin itself, and share a little bit about some of the exciting developments in that arena.
One thing I've observed is that while some individuals may get lasting effects from psilocybin work on its own, there are individuals where in time there's a decline. And there are papers coming out from places like Johns Hopkins showing that relief may only happen for 12 months after a psilocybin treatment. In some individuals, you know, there's a drop off in the benefits. And so my questions are always along the lines of, why does that happen? And what can we do to help create more enduring change for our clients? And my opinion is that the answer lies in addressing some of the underlying imbalances that might be contributing to someone's well-being state, including their neurological health or their brain health. And that's how I developed what I call neuro wellness, our neuro wellness protocols, which are proprietary methods, which I'm going to talk about in our course. We're going to talk about what I do to help complement the psilocybin to get superior participant outcomes. And in addition to that, you know, whether we're talking about nutrition or herbalism, those are just a couple holistic methods that I practice. There are many different methods out there. And whether we're talking about spiritual methods or biochemical methods, when you create the right protocol for a client, when you understand what is the etiology, as we say, what is the root cause of what's going on for them, you know, you'll start to see that some participants have a more complex root situation, and psilocybin may only be a piece of what they need. Cleansing and healing oftentimes is very important. For example, with the gut-brain axis, you know, there's this talk of the brain-gut axis and the gut-brain axis. How that is for sure at play with psilocybin. And I'm looking forward to seeing more emerging research on the gut-brain axis in relation to psilocybin. But I can tell you that if you work on the nervous system as a whole with different modalities, it's only going to enhance the participants' healing effects. And that's what I promote in our work.
Super exciting, all the neuro wellness work you've been developing. So last question I want to ask you is really about sort of on the business side of it, is about transitioning from one healing career or adding this to your toolkit. What have you seen in terms of people really starting to be able to earn a good livelihood and a thriving practice working as a psilocybin guide in Oregon, which should extrapolate to other states as they come online as well?
Yes, yes. Well, if you already have a healing practice, of course, you're going to have skills for attracting clients, and you may already have a following. So you can add this into your practice, and it's only going to be a boon to your work. You will attract new clients. And I can tell you that in the Oregon ecosystem, there are practitioners who only are psilocybin facilitators. They don't have any other auxiliary components that they bring to their practice. And those individuals who I know and I've spoken with, since, for instance, they've started doing legal services, which for some people has been the last 4, 5, 6 months, they are already making enough income to survive for the year and, in fact, to thrive. At the going rate for practitioners in Oregon, if you see clients on a regular basis and you're seeing somewhere in the 10 to 15 a month, 10 to 15 participants a month range, you're going to be extremely prosperous. And so there's a range, every practitioner charges a different amount based on your skill set, your experience level. And I think that people who have the training that we offer, it's clear that we offer a type of training that puts people at an advantage, that gives people skill sets that you just don't see or get in other training programs. And so I think that the people out there that I've spoken with, by having a more well-developed skill set, people can see more types of clients and have that confidence and that ability to do it well and to do it properly. And so, yeah, in Jackson County, we opened 4 months ago or 5 months ago, and there are people who are seeing those numbers that I mentioned, and they're making a great living. And I think that that's going to be the same case in Colorado and the other emerging decriminalized and legal markets.
Super exciting. That's great to hear. So Rose, let's bring you back on. And I know that one of the big buzzwords in psychedelic healing these days is integration. There was a lot of focus on the session itself or the expanded state as being the healing vehicle, but integration is getting more and more in the foreground. Just love to if you share a little bit of reflection on why, how important integration is and some of what you do with integration at Bodhi.
That's a really important topic. Integration is the healing. You could take a psychedelic on your own by yourself, not have a plan, be in whatever setting you end up in, have this powerful psychedelic experience, not have integration, and then as quickly as 4 to 5, 6 weeks later, you lost track of what you gained. You don't have a way to mobilize it into who you are, into your life. Integration allows us to find out what the meaning was of everything we saw in the psychedelic experience. And, that can be a wide range of all kinds of incredible visions and messages and phenomenon that can go on during the psychedelic event. And we may not know what we're witnessing. We might know in that experience that this is amazing and it feels really good and I feel really blissful, or it might feel like, wow, that's really heavy. I'm getting these realizations of all these things that happen that are really bringing me down. But at the same time, I'm understanding the context of it in terms of my past. But what will you do with that information in the future? How will you be able to integrate it into who you are and how you want to show up in your life and how you want to proceed in the trajectory of your life? Integration is where we get the benefits of the psychedelic experience. And it's really critical for not losing that magic, not losing that inspiration, or in many cases, being able to handle what the journey showed you, being able to process it and figure it out and understand what it really means for you, and how can you incorporate that into your healing process. People have a wide variety of experiences with psychedelics, and integration is really important for everyone. In the Bodhi Academy training, we cover in-depth integration processes, integration tools, how to measure a client's integration process, how much have they integrated from their experience, and how are they doing with engaging integration in their lives. We'll talk about how many sessions a person might need based on different kinds of experiences, based on what their goals are. And we really provide a whole toolkit of nonverbal as well as verbal integration techniques. So without integration, you kind of spent a day in an interesting experience. And with integration, that interesting experience has had a powerful and transformational effect on who you are and how you want to show up.
Really great answer. And let's, I also want to ask you a little bit about integrating plant medicines with other trauma methods. Since you have a really extensive therapeutic background, where do you see the sort of optimal relationship with some of the other trauma methods that are out there?
Yeah, I not only have experience with watching people accelerate their healing from trauma, or being able to drop the traumatic program and the kind of automatic trauma response as clients, but I have direct experience with it myself. Having worked in the traumatic stress industry, working with veterans, working with every kind of trauma, human inflicted suffering is so widespread. And when you're in the business of working with trauma survivors, you have a secondary exposure to that can affect you. And coming out of my clinical practice, turning to spiritual practice and meditation and quiet and discipline and chanting and being in nature, all of those were very important for me to start to feel like I could recover from that traumatic exposure. However, with the addition of psilocybin, it's so much better. Our clients come to us and they make a plan that they don't want to have those symptoms of PTSD anymore. They might have the intention, I want to stop being reactive to triggers. I want to be able to go beyond being triggered. I want to live in the present moment. I don't want to be tortured by the past automatically because my brain is reactive in that way. So when we set up those kinds of intentions for a ceremonial experience of the psilocybin, when we really ask our higher self, that part of us that really is transcendent of all of these struggles and transcendent even of the suffering we experienced, when we set out to make a connection with that through the power of the psychedelic experience, we attain amazing progress and victory toward our goals. The psilocybin will heal the brain. It will change the neurological system, and it will provide piercing insights and incredible realizations about what happened and why it happened and how easily you can drop it and how to live in the present. So many times I've heard clients come out of their experience of psilocybin saying, the present moment is all there is. And these are profound realizations that sound so simple, but if we could only live by that, then we wouldn't be troubled by anything from the past anymore. And we would start to be able to live in the now. And when we're in the now and unaffected by the past, the future is wide open and we can make it what we desire it to be.
Beautiful wisdom in what you just shared. And Rose, one final question in our workshop segment here today is like, what do you really see as some of the most significant things that guides have to shift in themselves to move from one kind of a healing mode to really guiding psilocybin sessions effectively?
That's another compelling component of this work. The guide is the anchor and the provider of harm reduction, who creates safety and support and provides education, and witnesses the client's experience. And as you witness that experience, you cannot be unaffected. You cannot be unmoved. We celebrate our clients' victories. We nurture them through struggles. We help them if they have an adverse event. We keep them safe. We help them if traumatic memories come up. We give them navigation skills for them. That we empower them into their own healing process by providing those skills and that safety for them. And at the same time, we cannot be unaffected. So for guides to have regular debriefing support with other guides, for guides to have a mentor or be able to work with experienced guides in a supervised practicum setting, to be able to have a community of guides that you can rely on to debrief, to share the journey, and to do your own work. And we provide detailed information in the training on how to build all of these guide support structures and guide self-care into how you're approaching this practice. You need to be surrendered. You need to be fully present. You need to let go of control. You need to not have an agenda. All the things we tell our clients, the guide is kind of the lighthouse that they're going to look to as to how are they going to acquire those skills, or what do those skills and attitudes look like. So when the guide is surrendered and trusting the medicine, then the client can be surrendered and trusting the medicine. And there are definitely situations that will test that in a guide, where the guide might feel like this is all going off the rails. Its client is having a really intense experience. And we teach a lot of reflection skills, centering skills, groundedness into the body, being an embodied presence, being the witness. All those kinds of things are so critical to being able to be an effective guide and continue to show up for your clients in the best possible way.
So with all that said, Rose, Anthony, Sienna, and Prema, I want to honor you for the wisdom and depth and beauty of what you've shared here today. Thank you so much for the good information and the true wisdom to help guide us in making the selection to be part of this movement. And if there's anything you want to still share that's on your heart with those of you who are considering joining you for the upcoming program, now would be a good moment.
I think the most important thing here is that I really want you to join us in this important work, in the resurgence of psychedelic natural plant and fungi medicines in service to human healing and raising the consciousness individually and collectively. If you're a healer, if you counsel people, if you're a psychologist, if you're a medical practitioner or a holistic wellness practitioner or any kind of healing arts specialist, you are trying to help support people in their healing, and adding the certified psilocybin guide credential to your skill set is going to enhance that work in ways you can't even imagine, in ways that you can see from the clinical studies are going to be deeply transformational and meaningful to many people. We are in a whole new era here in the US. Legal and decriminalized settings are opening up everywhere, and we need certified guides to meet the need, and we need guides who are well trained. We have included some tools in this training that don't exist anywhere else. Depth coaching, the combination of consciousness with science, the honoring of the traditions, as well as cutting edge harm reduction skills, and all the knowledge that you need to succeed and thrive and serve many, many, many people. So please join us in the new revolution and be a part of our Bodhi Academy Shift Network Psilocybin Certification Guide training program. It's going to be an incredible adventure. It will be life-changing for you, and you in turn will be life-changing for many other people.
Well, Rose, super inspiring close. Anthony, deep bow of gratitude. Sienna, deep bow of gratitude to you as well. And Prema, all of you are just really bringing so much more light, so much more wisdom, so much more healing to the world. So thank you for your commitment to serve this important movement and really give us all the training and information we need to be part of it. So thank you so much for creating the Psilocybin Guides program, and really looking forward to training a whole new group of people at the Vanguard with all of you in partnership. So the URL is www.mushroomguidestraining.com, mushroomguidestraining.com. Many blessings. Thank you so much.